Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started.
All right. Welcome to episode 123. That's right, 123 of Coach Bennett's podcast. We are back in Portland, and I don't know why I'm referring to me in the plural, but I am. We're back in Portland. It's been a crazy month of travel. I was in Berlin for the Berlin Marathon. And just a few weeks before that, I was in Jersey, the land of milk and honey, visiting family, moving kids in to colleges, seeing Oasis. I mean, it was wild. But then, like I said, Berlin Marathon, and then came back for just a few days to beautiful, peaceful Portland, and then headed out to Portugal for like a week, and then came back, and I think I was home for another 2 days. But prior to that, actually one of those 2 days I was home was the Portland Marathon, which was amazing and beautiful and peaceful. And then I headed out to Chicago for the Chicago Marathon, one of my favorite events every single year. And I just got back yesterday. So here we are, back in Portland, Oregon. Okay, or I should say Aura back. Get it? Okay, that was pretty weak. I liked it personally, but I know that some of you out there have excessively high expectations for my jokes, and that's okay. But I think considering the context, saying I'm back in Oregon, or maybe whatever. If I'm explaining the joke, maybe it's not a success, which brings me to the name of this podcast episode, which is Success. Success, not to be confused with the Success Run in the Nike running app, which is spelled Success. No, this is about straight up success. And once again, it's inspired by all of you. So how did you inspire me to make an episode called Success? Well, I just told you I was at the Berlin Marathon. I was at the Portland Marathon. I was at the Chicago Marathon. It's cross-country season. I mean, I am surrounded by people trying to find success, trying to achieve success, trying to accomplish success. And I thought, you know what? I think this is an important time to go over what exactly success means and how I think you should go about discovering success, acknowledging success, and really dealing with success, or dealing with not as much success as you wanted, or maybe in your mind, no success at all. So I think we should start with just the definition of success. It's a noun, and it means degree or measure of succeeding. That's definition 1A. Now, you know that I like the second definition, which we'll go to, because I'm going to talk about both of them. One that succeeds, okay? So let's start with the beginning one. 1A, degree or measure of succeeding. Now, the reason why I personally love definition 1A, and as I just mentioned, I rarely freak out about a first definition, but this first definition is fantastic, especially as a coach, to hear that the first definition is a degree or measure of succeeding. Now, why am I so excited about that? I'll tell you why. It doesn't define the degree or measure of succeeding, which means that's open to interpretation. In fact, you could say, by definition, any degree, any measurement of succeeding fits the definition of success, which means if you go to that second definition, one that succeeds, anyone that experiences any degree or any measure of succeeding is a success. Now, again, all I am is a coach who has some type of weird love for the dictionary, but you can't argue with the dictionary. I mean, you can, but that would be foolish. I think you should just read it, accept it, love it, and in this case, embrace it. So let's just rewind and go over this again. Success, noun, 1A, degree or measure of succeeding. And definition 2, one that succeeds. Oh yeah. Now, here's why I was so inspired by so many of you. If you break down the different marathons, they all had their own issues. So if you're giving context to an athlete, like for instance, Berlin was hot. It was really hot. And it wasn't just hot. The sun was strong, which means that UV was high. So you're not only battling heat, you're battling very strong sun, radiation, okay? They both affect you negatively if you're trying to do something that requires a great amount of endurance, which, by the way, a marathon does. Portland, there was a lot of stress around this weekend. What was going on in the world? There were a lot of athletes in Portland that were dealing with a significant amount of stress. Stress can negatively impact not just your performance, but your mentality, your mindset. It can negatively impact you emotionally. All of these things can set you back on race day. And then you had Chicago. Chicago had, I think it was 55,000 people. It was warm. It was, but I'm not going to say it was too hot, but it did get hot later in the day. So those athletes that are running 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6 hour plus marathons, they're dealing with some significant heat for that last hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours of running. By the way, let me just throw this in here. If you're someone, I don't think anyone that listens to this is a someone like this, but if you are someone like this, you're about to get checked. The mentality that some runners have that, if you run like 250 or 330, like, wow, that's impressive. But running for 5 hours is not impressive, is mind-blowing to me. Because it usually comes from people that never, ever, ever would be able to run for 5 hours. They just wouldn't be able to do it. It's an incredible amount of physical and emotional, mental, mindful endurance to compete for 5 hours. I mean, I sit with people, I'm one of them, that gets up multiple times while watching a movie that's 2.5 hours long. People that get fidgety and like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can focus for a 2.5 hour movie, much less a 3 hour movie or a 3.5, 4, 5 hour movie. And yet people have judgment on someone going out and spending 5 hours, 5.5 hours, 6 hours completing 42.2K. So just wanted to slide that in there. So the Chicago, I spoke with, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people prior to the race. And I heard all sorts of stories. I heard stories from people that came into town, they had a bib, and they were having the hard discussion with themselves of whether or not they should run because of illness or they missed training because of injury. There were a whole host of reasons. And that was one part of why I wanted to have this conversation about success. I also had other people that I saw on the course that were dealing with just race day not going the way they thought for a whole host of reasons. Maybe they cramped up, which again doesn't mean anything went wrong in your training. It just means on race day, something happened. You cramped up, which could be another host of reasons why that happened. You had some people that just got to a certain point and it just wasn't that day. Now, the issue with the marathon is, unlike, let's say, something like a 1500 or a 5K, which I ran in college and post-collegiately, you're not doing another marathon 7-10 days later like you would when you're racing the 15 or the 5K. So the emotional baggage that comes with the marathon when it doesn't work out the way you want it to work out is very different than a 1500 or a 5K or a 10K. And I'm not diminishing how emotionally damaging it can be when a 10K or a 5K or a 1500 doesn't work out. The point is, you got another starting line in like a week. So you can learn, you can have the setback, and you can move forward pretty quickly. You probably only have one speed workout in between races if you're a 1500 meter runner. Maybe you're not racing for 2 or 3 whole weeks, but with a marathon, you're training 14, 16, 18 weeks for one day. And if it doesn't work out on that one day and you cramp up at kilometer 35, you're not going to have another shot for months. That's the reality. So I understand the intense amount of pressure and why success for so many marathoners is very black and white. It's hit or miss. There isn't a gray area. There isn't a partially successful. Now, I think some of this, just to kind of sidebar with everybody, has to do with our intense fascination with marathon times. It's like people train and like their first goal is the time. When you're running track, for instance, in cross country, a lot of times it's about more than the time. It's about your place in the race. It's about qualifying for something else. It's about progression. It's about starting a season strong, and you're comparing it to the previous season, let's say, and you know you're not going to be setting a personal best opening in the season for the most part, especially when you get later on in your career. Remember, the better you get, the harder it gets to get better. So you start a season, and it could be your, 17th fastest 1500 ever. And you're like, hey, everything went pretty well. I felt pretty good. My tactics were good. I finished strong at the end. And the time is inconsequential, really. Now, with the marathon, it's very rare that someone has that type of a mentality. When it happens, it's a very healthy marathoner, I will say. So I understand the mentality on race day that a lot of athletes have. Basically, I'm trying to break 4 hours. I'm trying to break 5 hours. I'm trying to go under 2:45. And when it doesn't happen, it's like all of this was for nothing, which is a really terrible attitude to have. It really is. I understand that, sometimes you got to go for broke in a race plan, but that doesn't mean if it doesn't work out that you got nothing out of it. And that's what I wanted this episode to be about. I mean, one of the truths of the Nike Run Club, when I started working for Nike back in 2014, I came up with a list of truths, and one of them was measure success as many ways as you can. Now, I used to coach a high school team, and we had very, very big goals, and I understood that in order for us to have the best opportunity to reach, accomplish, achieve those biggest goals, we were going to have to maintain momentum. We were going to have to stay focused and positive. We were going to have to experience as much success as possible to continue to work as hard as we needed to do. And I knew the better we got, the harder it was going to be to achieve the goals we had. Yes, could we win states? Absolutely. Could we have set that as the goal? Yes. But our goal was to be the best team in the United States. And the odds of us doing our goals got smaller and smaller and smaller, the bigger and bigger and bigger the goal that we had. We had over a 95% chance of winning states. We had over a 90% chance of winning our regional meet, which was the qualifier to make the national championships. So, yes, we were basically, I'm not going to say guaranteed because there are no guarantees, but we had a 90% chance of being the best team in the Northeast. Then suddenly, when we got to the starting line with the other best teams in the United States, well, it dropped maybe to 50%, maybe to 55% in the best years. I mean, to win against the best teams? Listen, one of the essential ingredients for greatness is humility. I knew that we didn't have a 90% chance of winning. These other teams were extraordinary. And when you take on something as big as the marathon, I don't care how great your training was. The marathon is 42.2K of the unknown. It is 26.2 miles of no guarantees. So I don't care how great your training is. If you're narrowly defining success by something as specific as a time on the clock when you have not brought in any context around the day, like the heat, the stress in your life, how your training's been going, whether somebody sneezed on you on the airplane 7 days ago. We're going about this the wrong way. I always looked at the athletes and tried to train them to a point where we had an opportunity, the possibility to achieve our goal when we took the starting line. Anything that happened after that, I don't know. I don't know. We've got a shot though. And that's what was exciting. And that's where the butterflies come in, because you don't know what's going to happen. So for me, it was very important that we always had the possibility to experience some success every single day. And if we were smart about this, not soft about this, smart about this, we did experience some success every single day, because I was looking for it every single day. I wanted to find success every single day. And this doesn't mean as a coach or as an athlete, you can't be critical of yourself. I think it's essential to be critical of yourself. That's part of what it means to take part in a sport if your goal is to end every time you partake in it a little better in some way. So that means you should be looking for things to improve upon. But remember, the key here with being critical is to be critical to build up and not to beat down. It's to be critical in a positive way, not critical in a negative way. Because when we're critical in a positive way, and I'll tell you what that means in a second, and not critical in a negative way, we're still moving forward. When you're being critical in a negative way, the athlete walks away thinking they're worse than they were when they got to practice. The point is to make sure if the athlete makes a mistake, if the athlete experiences a setback, you're being critical in a way where you give them advice, you teach them, you guide them, you help them on how to correct a mistake or benefit from the struggle they just had, to give them some learning that they can bring to the next practice, and more importantly, to the next time they experience something akin to what they just experienced. That's what good coaching is about, and you can be your best coach, and you can be your own best coach, remember? What I have an issue with is when I see coaches berate athletes, and then there's no instruction. There's no teaching. There's just, you screwed up, what are you doing? Go sit on the bench. What is your purpose, dude? What are you here to do? To just knock people? Is that how you think people get better? And some coaches will say, well, we experience success. And I would say, okay, that's fine. You would have experienced more success. That's what I believe. If you had actually coached, if you had actually taught, if you had actually helped, guided these athletes. And I'm saying the same thing to athletes that do this to themselves. Because remember, you out there on the run, you are your own coach. Your coach isn't with you. Those voices in your head, those are those teammates, those friends, those coaches that you're bringing along on the run. It's important for you to also be critical to build up and not critical to beat down. It's important for you out there to find success in what you're doing. All right? So, something to think about here. You want to measure success as many ways as you can. And I'll give you some examples. All right? Because I obviously post-marathon weekend or a big cross-country weekend. Cross-country, it's a little bit different. I'm going to just throw this in here right now. Your times are meaningless unless you're comparing it to a course that you've run on before. Meaning, if you run a certain time on one course and you compare that time to another course, that's meaningless. They're two different courses. It makes no sense. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that course was hilly, that course was pancake flat. Why are you comparing the two? You could run significantly slower on the hilly course, and it's a better race than the faster race on the pancake flat course. So if you're focused on times during a cross-country season, I don't know what you're doing unless those times are very, very specific to a specific course, meaning you're comparing your time on that course to that course again. But I will also say cross country is a team sport, and it's about place, not pace. So if you're a coach that's rewarding kids for times, just blanket, and it has nothing to do with what course they're running on, I don't know what you're doing. It should be about how they compete against the athletes they are competing with. That's what cross country is about. And it's a team sport. Start from there. I know I'm going off here. I don't need to be going off. All right, so we'll start with this. I didn't get my time because that's what we're talking about. All right, I get it. And that's okay to be disappointed. And that's, I guess, something else I should say here. It's okay to be disappointed. Nothing here that I'm saying is negating how important it is to be disappointed sometimes and to have your heart broken sometimes, especially for something like a marathon or even a season of cross country or track or a 5K, a 10K. It doesn't matter. The point is anything that you are really passionate about, anything that you pour your heart into, anything that really matters to you, when it doesn't work out the way you want it, it's okay to be devastated. It's okay to be crushed. It's okay to be heartbroken. It's okay to go and cry on the cool down. In fact, I had teams where I would say, this is what I want you to do. Go cool down. And if you need to cry, cry. And when you come back, let's congratulate the teams that beat us. Because that's what we do. Right? But most importantly is I wanted them to know it's okay to be upset. It's okay to feel let down. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be disappointed. So none of this is saying measure success as many ways as you can and don't ever be disappointed. That's stupid. As a coach, I'm not saying I want you to be disappointed, but when things don't work out, I want you to be disappointed. That's one of the reasons why we take part in sports, to fail in a safe environment, to have to deal with emotions in a supportive environment, to sometimes be disappointed, to sometimes have our heart broken. And as I've mentioned before, remember, the heart's a muscle. And how do you build up a muscle? You got to break it down. So if you have a broken heart, it's not proof that the heart is broken. It's not proof that the heart isn't working. It's proof that it is. And if you can give yourself the time and the grace to recover, then that heart will repair itself and it will build itself up bigger and better. Just something to think about. So let's imagine you don't get your time. Okay? Well, I will say this, people, in the marathon, it's kind of sort of expected you have a chance. But I'm not going to say that you've got a better chance than not to get your time, especially if you've run it a couple times. And people can say well, I know Chicago's, a fast course, right? I mean, it's flat. Yeah, and I think when you're comparing it to other courses that are difficult, to other courses that are, undulating and hilly and things like that, yeah, it is. I mean, and I guess you could say, yeah, it's a fast course. The problem is, I think when people say something like Chicago's a fast course or Berlin's a fast course, they misrepresent it in their head by thinking it's an easy course. So let me just say this flat out. There are fast marathon courses. There are no easy marathon courses. There just aren't. Because every marathon course is 42.2K, 26.2 miles. There is nothing easy about that ever. So, are there fast courses out there? Sure, relatively speaking. But there are no easy marathon courses. And I know someone's going to say, a downhill one's easy. No, it's not. Have you ever tried to run 26.2 miles downhill? Have you ever tried to run 10K downhill? It is devastating. It is brutal. It is awful. And if you try to run it hard, it's even worse. Your quads get annihilated. So no, there's no easy marathon course, all right? So if you don't get your time, guess what? If that was your number one goal, you had the wrong number one goal. I think, and I told a lot of people this past weekend and in Portland and in Berlin, that their number one goal should be, I'm going to try to race my best. That's it. I'm going to try to race my best. Because when you lead with a time goal, when it seems like the time goal is slipping away, you think the entire purpose of the race is slipping away. Now, if your time goal is a goal, but not the main goal, because your main goal is I'm going to race my best, then when the time goal slips away, your main goal still is in effect. Okay, today isn't the day I'm going to run my fastest, although if you've run a marathon or a 20K or a 10K or even a 1500 or even an 800, sometimes you go through periods, you're like, today's not my day, but I'm going to race and I'm going to compete. And next thing you know, it's your day. So if the goal is to race your best, you will stay engaged. You will continue to try to carry out the next best strategy or this strategy as best as you can, knowing that it's not about the pace anymore. It's about carrying out the strategy or the tactics. It's about competing with pride. It's about being a good teammate to yourself. It's about making sure you're navigating the water stations as best as you can. You're taking advantage of the people you're competing with. You have all of these other facets of trying to race your best. Now, here's the coolest part about it. If your goal is to try to race your best, that also happens to be the best way to accomplish a goal like your fastest. Yeah, how cool is that? But your goal of trying to race your fastest is not always conducive to racing your best. Just throwing that out there. How cool is that? So the thing is, when it comes to time, I'm okay with it being your goal. I love metrics. I'm a geek like that. But I don't think it should be your number one time. It can be your number two. It shouldn't be your number one goal. It can be your number two, okay? Second is awesome. It's really awesome. Yeah. So let it be your second place goal. That's all I'm saying. Another example of measuring success as many ways as you can are those athletes that I talked to that had to adjust dramatically what the marathon was going to be for them this weekend. I had some athletes saying, you know what, I was going to come in here, I was going to try to race. I really thought I could get myself in shape to potentially set a personal best. Great, there's your time goal, I get it. But training got messed up because I got sick, or I dealt with an injury, or life got in the way, which guess what, when you're training for a marathon, you know, those last 6 to 8 weeks, it's a lot of running. And you have to find time to do it. And you have to live your life. And sometimes life's like, look, you got to make a choice here. And sometimes your choice is, I have other responsibilities and obligations that supersede this marathon goal. And as a result, you don't get to train the way you want to. Okay, they had to adjust their goal. And a lot of athletes thought that was a failure because they adjusted their goal. And I said, that's great coaching. That is great coaching. What's the alternative? Chasing a goal you no longer have the ability to get? I don't understand that. What is the purpose of that? Why would you do that? And this goes even beyond to those athletes who said, I can't race this weekend. And I say, wow, you should be really proud of yourself because it's okay to be hurting and run. It's not okay to be hurt and run. So think about that. And there were athletes that realized, I'm hurt and I shouldn't take on a 42.2K road race. And congratulations to them, because that is great self-coaching. That is a great teammate they're being to themselves. That is a smart athlete. And I would tell them, all of that training you did up to this point doesn't go away. The learnings you had doesn't go away. This was not a lost 6 months, 4 months. This was valuable. You're a better athlete as a result, and you will be stronger for making a decision like this. You know, I always say it takes an incredible amount of courage to walk up to and cross a starting line. But here's the thing. It takes sometimes even more courage to walk away from a starting line you shouldn't cross. So that to me is a success. And it doesn't mean you throw away all that training, all of that earned experience and earned wisdom you gained from this training block. Don't throw it away. A lot of athletes do. And you shouldn't. And another thing to think about when it comes to success from a coaching point of view, we're looking at the entirety of not just the training, but the entirety of the race. So a lot of times things have gone well and then, you know, it gets very hot, you miss a water station, you roll your ankle, your calf, cramps up, and the athlete, as they're prone to do, is like the entire thing was a disaster. From a coaching point of view, we say, well, let's go through this. How'd the first part go? Okay, we hit what we wanted to do strategy-wise and tactic-wise early. How are we doing with fluids and fueling? Okay, that's great because we had issues with that in the past. That's terrific. Did we feel comfortable and confident? Yes, we did. And then what happened? Well, at 26K, my calf cramped up. Okay, that's fine. We'll spend time trying to figure out why you cramped up. But then what happened? Well, I took some time and, I backed off on the pace. The cramp kind of loosened up, and I ran strong, as strong as I could. And, obviously I missed our time. All right, well, let's just think about this. You dealt with the problem. You continued to run intelligently. And if we remove the clock from this, we have lots of success here. Because if you take this mentality, this level of focus, this type of commitment, and there is no calf cramp, we're doing something really great. And a lot of times athletes will say, I just didn't look at it that way. That's okay. There's a lot of stuff we miss all day long. I mean, the amount of times I'm on a run and someone's like, did you see that snake or something, on the path? And I'm like, no, I did not see it. Like, it doesn't mean I missed, completely what I was supposed to see in the run. I was looking in a different place. I didn't see it. And I'm really happy I didn't see it because snakes freak me out. I don't care if you're a garden snake. I'm not a snake wrangler. I don't know the difference between you. I know probably the difference between a garden snake and like a cobra. But when I'm out there and I'm running, I don't have the time to say, does he have diamonds? Does she have yellow touching red or whatever it is? As far as I'm concerned, you're a snake. I think you're nasty. I don't want to be anywhere near you. I'm not going to drop a boulder on you. I'm not going to try to wrangle you. I know that you have a right to exist and you do stuff for the ecosystem. I'm just saying, I don't want to hang out. I don't want to wear a tank top and have you on my neck and be hanging out somewhere. I don't want to feed mice to you in my bedroom. Like, I don't want to do any of that. All right? I'm just saying I don't want any of it. My point is, sometimes you just don't see what the coach sees, which is one of the benefits of having a coach or teammates in your life, or you have the faculty to be able to look beyond the way you normally look to expand out the aperture of what you're seeing when you're going over a race, because there's so much success that can be found in a great race and in a race that maybe by your definition is not so great or is a bad race. Because guess what? There are bad races. There absolutely are. I think one of the great success stories of a bad race is getting over a bad race and moving on from a bad race and realizing the bad race does not have to hold you back or pull you down. You can take it for what it was, a bad performance, a bad day, simply a bad race, and move on. You can look at it, be critical of it, find areas to improve upon, and then be improved. How cool is that? The answer is really cool. And maybe you walk away from it and you say, you know what, I should have run better. I had a bad day and I should have run better. I had a tough day. I could have run faster. I had a really miserable experience and I could have handled it better as a coach, a teammate, and a friend to myself out there. That is movement forward. That is progress, even when the race didn't go or end the way you wanted it to. You can still progress if you can just look for success, if you can just measure success. And remember that first definition, it does not bring into account the degree or the measure of success, which means it doesn't have to be a total success to still be a success. And that means you can then associate yourself with achieving that success. Yes. Did you achieve all the success you possibly could have achieved? No. Did you still achieve some success? Yes. So take it. You earned it. We leave so much success behind because nah, it's not enough. Like, what are you talking about? I have people in my life that always hold on to their change. And you know what they do? They keep it, and then they bring it to the store, they dump it in one of those machines, and they walk out with like $200. And I'm like, $200? how much change was that? And they're like, well, every time, like, someone, gives me change, I take the change, I find change, people leave change on the ground. Next thing you know, I put it in this bucket, I bring the bucket to the store, now I got $200. It's the same thing with success. Yes, you have pennies of success here and nickels of success here and dimes of success here and a crumpled up dollar bill. And sometimes you find a little success in like the dryer and you're like, oh my gosh, where'd this $20 of success come from? You didn't even know you had it. And suddenly you put it all together and I got $200. What are you going to do with the $200 of success? I don't know, but probably something awesome and probably something you wouldn't have done if you didn't have that $200 of little bitty successes that normally you would throw away. Don't leave behind, throw away, or dismiss any success. Don't diminish any success that you experience. Like I said, running is not easy, but we can make it almost always hard when we diminish our own success. Don't do that. Because if you can hold on to those successes, if you can measure success as many ways as you can, if you can celebrate even the smallest successes, you will keep going. And when you keep going, you know what you find? More starting lines. And you know what you have on the other side of all those starting lines? The opportunity for more success. And I'll tell you what, if you can keep finding success, if you can keep crossing starting lines, you're going to keep finding yourself somewhere extraordinary. That's the key. More starting lines await. And those starting lines will be crossed if you can just realize that there is more success out there. And you have already experienced more success than maybe you're willing to accept or acknowledge. But you've achieved it. Own it. Don't leave it behind. Okay? That's the episode. That's episode 1, 2, 3, success. Oh, I like that. That's what it should be called. It should be called 1, 2, 3 success. But anyway, it's too late now. Well, it's not too late now. I'm just not going to do it. But I'm just going to call it success. Brevity, people. Brevity. I rarely take part in it, but today I'm doing it. So that was the episode. Thank you to, the thousands of people that I've run into over the last month. I'm so inspired and motivated by all of you and all the success every single one of you has achieved and I hope acknowledge. All right? Thank you for listening to this episode. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for sharing the show, following the show, rating the show, leaving a review for the show. And as always, take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And I'll meet you on the next starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you haven't already subscribed or set yourself as a follower to the podcast, I really hope you would. And make sure you check out the show notes, because in those show notes, you're going to find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter and all the social media sites I'm on, like Instagram and Threads and Cameo and Blue Sky and Nope, not on that one anymore. So all the ones I am on, you're going to find it in the show notes, so check that out as well. And as always, thank you again for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. Until next time, you keep taking care of yourself and each other.